Hi everyone, it's Miss Terry and I'm here to talk about my February picks for kids in grades 5 through 6. We're going to go through some fiction and then we'll go through some graphic novels and then some nonfiction, and I hope you enjoy them. This first one is called Out of This World by Chris Wooding, and this is a story about Jack. And on his 12th birthday, a gang of aliens show up on his doorstep, and it turns out that they're looking for a kid that looks exactly like Jack, and he's actually the universe's greatest criminal mastermind. And Jack is trying to figure out what the heck is going on and try to convince these aliens that he is not who they are looking for, and maybe he can help them find out. So if you like action-packed space adventures, you'll definitely enjoy Out of This World. A little bit of mistaken identity as well. The Smartest Kid in the Universe is a new one by Chris Gravenstein, who is the author of Mr. Lemoncello's Library. So if you really like action-packed, funny adventures with a lot of puzzles and things like that, you'll probably enjoy The Smartest Kid in the Universe. And this is about Jake. And Jake he's not really, I'm not gonna say that he's dumb, but he's a little bit unmotivated. And one day he's at his mom's office and he sees this jar of jelly beans and he's like, ooh, this will be great. So he eats them, but he doesn't realize that his mom is actually holding them for a scientist who's having a conference at her hotel where she works. And it turns out that these jelly beans are not exactly just jelly beans. They're the first form of ingestible knowledge. And so before he knows it, Jake has actually become the smartest kid in the universe because of all this knowledge that he ingested. Unfortunately, they haven't really been tested or approved by the government, so they're not sure how long they're gonna last, if they'll last forever. And Jake is not really 100% sure what to do with all of this new knowledge that he has, but everybody wants him. The FBI, the CIA, and some not so nice people who hope that they can use Jake's knowledge now to do some things that they shouldn't be. So if you enjoy stories about a very unlikely hero, this definitely would be a good choice for you. This next one is called The Nightmare Thief, and this is about a girl named Marin who works in her grandmother's shops, and what they do is they create dreams for people and they give them to them. Unfortunately, one of the biggest rules of the shop is that you cannot give dreams to somebody without their consent. Well, this is fine for Marin. She doesn't have a problem really following this rule until her sister Hallie has an accident and ends up in a coma. And so she's hoping that if she slips her a couple dreams, it might help speed up her healing. Well, this is a very big no-no in the dream world, and she ends up getting caught by a very evil woman who decides to blackmail Marin into creating nightmares for her enemies. And now Marin is kind of trapped and she doesn't really know what to do. So this is called The Nightmare Thief. No, I don't know if I like the idea that somebody could slip me a dream without my consent, especially if it's not a good dream. This next one is another sci-fi fantasy. This one is called The List, and it is about a girl named Letta. And Letta actually lives in a world in the future from here, where global warming has really created a catastrophe and there's very few people left. And she lives on a place called the Ark. And in this world, there are really concerned that words have power and words are what caused all of the trouble to begin with. And so they decide that they're going to limit their vocabulary to about 500 words, and it's called List. That's the name of their language. And Letta she's a wordsmith. It's her job to kind of keep track of all of the words, what is okay, what isn't okay, all under the guise of her leader. And it turns out that not everybody who's left on the planet agrees with this idea that words are more dangerous than having knowledge and being able to try to fix things. And there's of course a resistance, and she meets one of the boys from the resistance who wants to try to get Letta to give them some more words so that they have more knowledge and might be able to fix the predicament that they're in. This is the first in this series. There's already a second one out. So that's called The List. How to Be a Girl in the World is about a girl named Lydia who's starting to grow up, and she's a little self-conscious about the changes to her body, especially some of the unwanted attention she's starting to get from boys at school, and unfortunately from her mom's boyfriend, who's starting to hug her a little bit longer than she would like, and she's just feeling a little bit creeped out by him and isn't sure how to tell her mom about this. So this is the story about her and her family. Her mom ends up buying this kind of ramshackle old house, which is kind of perfect for Lydia because she loves horror novels, and it kind of reminds her of one of those horror novels. But this is the story about her kind of trying to come into her own and figure out how is she going to tell her mom that her boyfriend's making her very uncomfortable, and just how to kind of embrace the changes that are happening to her. This is called How to Be a Girl in the World. This next one is called The Sea in Winter. Seems very appropriate for this cold time of year. And it's about a girl named Maisie. And Maisie loves ballet. She really wants to do nothing but ballet. Unfortunately, she ends up injuring her knee. She tears her ACL. And her family decides to go on a road trip to kind of rejuvenate them and try to get Maisie to look at there might be something else you can do with your life if ballet isn't in the cards. Maisie is really suffering from a bit of depression, and she's trying to figure out how to deal with that, and also kind of that whole idea of what do I do when I've just lost the only dream I've ever had, and how do I start over from that? So that's called The Sea in Winter. If you like athletics, you definitely would probably enjoy this story as well. Dragon Ops is for all you video gamers out there, and this is a story about a place called Dragon's Ops, which is a virtual reality theme park based on a video game. And the boy in this story, he ends up getting chosen to be one of the beta testers for this park, and he and a couple of his friends go in there, and they get to, pretend to be in this community that they've known about online. There's dragons, and once they get in there, however, it looks like they're not going to be able to get out unless they can solve all of the levels that are in throughout the park. So if you love video games, you're going to enjoy this. If you like Dungeons and Dragons type theme, you'll probably enjoy this as well. It's called Dragon Ops. Definitely action-packed adventure full of dragons and a lot of really neat kind of puzzles and quests that the characters have to go on. This next one is a Choose Your Own Adventure. It's a new series by Matt Dodine. He's written quite a few others that I've shared with you in the past, but this one is called Could You Be a Monster Wave Surfer? So it's a little bit different in the sense of the Can You Survive, history type events, but more, would you be able to handle the waves of surfing? And there's 44 choices and 20 different endings, and one of the choices you can make is whether or not you want to go surfing in shark-infested waters. So there is a little bit of a scary element to this as well, in addition to just trying to see if you can make the choices that real surfers would make in order to keep themselves safe, but also be able to find the biggest waves. Molly and the Twin Towers is a part of the Girls Survive series, and this is about a girl named Molly who is at school on the day when 9/11 happened, and she's decides to leave school to find her sister Addie and try to get them home. She's having a really hard time getting a hold of her dad, who is actually a pilot, and her grandmother is a firefighter right down at Ground Zero. So this is definitely a really good historical fiction in the sense that it took place during 9/11, which doesn't seem like it's that history, but it's actually almost 20 years ago already. But this is the story of how Molly gets her sister home safe and whether or not she finds her family. So that's Molly and the Twin Towers. If you like the I Survive series, you probably would enjoy that. And then this last fiction one I'm going to share with you today is called On a Good Horse. And this is about a boy named Alex. And Alex has a couple dreams. He loves soccer. He wants to maybe play soccer professionally. Or he also is really into graphic design, and he thinks that might be part of his future. One thing he never thought that he would be interested in, though, is horses and being a cowboy, kind of like his deadbeat dad, who never really sees that often. Well, then tragedy strikes for him and his family, and he ends up having to go live with his dad on a horse ranch. And his dad kind of is trying very hard to build a relationship with Alex, even though he's rather reluctant to do so. And he ends up buying Alex a very spirited horse in the hopes that it might help them become closer. So if you like horse stories, you definitely enjoy this. If you like stories about families that are kind of struggling, you also will enjoy that. So that's On a Good Horse. So those are some of the fictions ones. Let's look at some of the graphic novels. The I Survived series actually is starting a graphic novel series. This is actually number 2. Number 3 is coming out pretty soon, but this is I Survived the Shark Attacks of 1916. And this is a story about a boy named Chet who has been moved around a lot because of his family's job. And his parents decide to send him to go live with his uncle for a while, just so that he can kind of stay in one place and make some new friends. And it happens to be right off the Jersey Shore during 1916 when there actually were quite a few shark attacks on the shore. And this is a story about Chet and his friends and whether or not they survived that episode. Okay. City of Secrets is about a boy named Ever. And again, these are graphic novels, so if you're not sure what I'm talking about, they're written in comic book format. And Ever is an orphan. His family is disappeared, and he ends up guarding a secret to a building that is in their community called the Switchboard Operating Facility. And people think originally that he didn't survive the tragedy that happened to his family, but he did. And now he's kind of hiding in secret in this building, hoping to guard the secret that could unravel their entire society. And there's definitely some bad people who are looking for him and for this secret once they discover that he actually is still alive. So another action-packed sci-fi fantasy adventure, and that's the City of Secrets. This next one is called Cub, and it's about a girl named Cindy, and she's just kind of started middle school with all of the troubles of friends and boys and mean girls, but she also lands a job at the school newspaper, and she is learning what it means to be a reporter. She gets to hunt down some ghost hunters. She is trying to show how being a reporter actually can help her community by unraveling some mysteries that will show a corrupt leader is not doing what they're supposed to be doing. So she's learning about that. At the same time, she's trying to navigate middle school. She does have a rather funny incident where she falls into her crush while riding a bicycle. If you like stories like Nat enough, you probably would enjoy Cub. This next one is called A House Divided, and this is about a girl named Henrietta Achilles, who, this is actually the second in the series. It's not really that important that you've read the first one in order to understand the second stories, but we do have the first one if you're interested. But she ends up inheriting a house from her uncle, who is a wizard, and this house has a lot of secrets, a lot of things that Henrietta is still trying to figure out, and she has some friends that are helping her. And in this episode, the house has a plumbing problem, and water is coming out everywhere. It's threatening to flood the entire town, and Henrietta and her friends have to try to stop it and try to save their village. It's definitely kind of on the funny side, but it's also got that magic and mystery as well. It's A House Divided, and the subtitle is A Light in the Darkness, A Lock on the Door. These next two are of the manga variety, which means that they're read from the back to the front, and instead of left to right, right to left. There's actually a really nice little diagram in here that tells you exactly how to read this type of graphic novel. And this one is called Super Mario Manga Mania, and it has a whole bunch of different stories based in the Super Mario world. So if you love that video game, you're probably gonna enjoy this story. And then the other one is a retelling of a classic story, Anne of Green Gables, but again, written in that manga format. And this is a story about a young girl named Anne who gets adopted by this couple that lives on a farm, who were kind of hoping to get a boy so that he could help with the chores on the farm, but they get Anne instead. And Anne she's very willful. She has very strong opinions about how the world should work, and this older couple has to figure out where Anne will fit into their lives. So this is Anne of Green Gables. All right, so those are the graphic novels. Let's talk about some nonfiction. And this first one I actually have for you is actually a graphic novel nonfiction. And this one is called The Challenger Disaster, Tragedy in the Skies. And this is the story about the astronauts on the Challenger in January 28th, 1986. There were 7 astronauts, one of whom was Krista McAuliffe, who was a high school teacher. She would have been the first civilian to go into space, and unfortunately at T-minus 73 seconds during liftoff, the Challenger did explode. And this story talks a lot about the history of that and how that changed the way that we look at going into space, and what kind of precautions were changed, and new precautions that came up to make sure that this kind of disaster never happened again. And it's kind of told in a fun way, where in the near future, a group of students are learning about the history of the Challenger disaster on their own space voyage. So this is, again, nonfiction about the Challenger disaster. This next one is called Difficult Riddles for Smart Kids, and this is an entire book that just has riddles in it. For example, one of the riddles is, what word looks the same upside down and backwards at the same time? So what word looks the same, whether you read it flipped over or backwards to forwards? And the answer to that is swims. If you write that out, S-W-I-M-S, it does look the same in all directions. So if you enjoy teasing your brain and trying to think of answers, you will enjoy difficult riddles. And all the answers are listed in the back of the book. I encourage you to try to figure it out though before you look them up. This next one is called Online Battle Arena Esports. So esports is kind of, I'm not gonna say it's a new thing because it's actually been around for a while, but it's gaining in popularity. The high school now has an esports team. So if you're really interested in online video games and working together with a team in those video games, you probably would enjoy the world of esports. And this one is particularly about Battle Arena Esports. And it talks a lot about what competitions are out there, what it takes to become a member of those teams, how they practice, and all those kind of things. And it can be a lucrative career. One team recently won $2.4 million from winning a tournament. So that's not too bad for playing video games. So Online Battle Arena Esports. This next one is the history of the world in comics, and it looks at the Earth itself and how it's changed since its very beginning. And one of the things I find very interesting about this book is that of all the history in the world, this much of it has no human beings on it. And then the last 4 pages are actually when the humans arrived and what that looked like. So if you enjoy learning about the Earth, if you like to hear about dinosaurs and all the different eras, then you probably will enjoy this book. And again, it's written in graphic novel format. This next one is another animal book. This one is called The Screaming Hairy Armadillo and 76 Other Animals with Weird Wild Names. I always enjoy stories about animals that I've never ever heard of, and this is definitely a book that falls into that category. I marked a page that talks about the Sparkle Muffin Peacock Spider, which never heard of it. Very silly name, Sparkle Muffin Peacock Spider, which is just kind of a ridiculous name as well. But it also talks about what that spider does. There he is in reality. I think I probably would freak out if I saw one of those in person. And then it also talks about the other spiders that are very similar to that. So it's got different information about all of those different creatures and where they can be found and why they have such a kooky name. This next one is called Slacklining and Other Extreme Rope Sports. If you can see the athlete in this picture, they are walking across a very high gorge on just a rope. So this slacklining means tying a rope from one side to the other and walking across it almost like a tightrope. And it talks about where these sports take place, how you can maybe practice if you're interested in maybe trying it to see if you have good balance. And then it tells you different parts of the world where they're doing this a lot. And then there's also part of slacklining is called trick lining, which is doing tricks while you're in the middle of the air. A little bit too risky for me, but if you enjoy extreme sports, you might enjoy slacklining and other extreme rope sports. And then the last one I have for you today is called History Smashers. This one in particular is about Pearl Harbor. And the point of this series is to kind of take things that we've always kind of heard about specific historical events and say, well, that's not exactly how it happened. One of the things about Pearl Harbor is that it was just out of the blue. We had no idea that it was coming. And according to the research of this author is, yeah, actually we kind of guessed that Pearl Harbor would be a big target. We just didn't listen to the signs and do anything to protect our harbor. We kind of thought, well, we're American, nobody's gonna attack us, and then they did. So this talks all about the attack on Pearl Harbor and that time period of history. Enjoy.